Hello and welcome to WorldCanvass from International Programs at the University of Iowa. I'm Joan Kerr. We're coming to you from our new home at Film Scene in downtown Iowa City, and very happy to have so many of you with us. We invite you to join us for these live programs if you can, or catch them later on UITV, YouTube, or iTunes. Information about upcoming shows as well as links to archived programs can be found at international.uiowa.edu, and you can learn more about Film Scene at icfilmscene.org. Tonight's program is all about innovation and the entrepreneurial spirit, and we want to spend some time thinking about how communities can stay strong and even thrive in rapidly evolving times. We've named this segment of our series Rethinking Our Communities with a Startup Mentality, and our guests are, next to me, Sarah Binder, a journalist with We Create Here. Thank you for being here, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
And next to her is Mark Nolte, the president of the Iowa City Area Development Group. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
And David Tominski is at the far end there. He's the program manager of the Iowa Startup Accelerator. So thank you for coming, David.
Thanks for having us.
So I think I'd like to start with you, Sarah, and this is a question the other guys might want to weigh in on as well. But what do we mean by a startup mentality?
Definitely. So, I think everybody we've had on the show here tonight has mentioned startup community. And what that really boils down to is just people talking to each other. So, in my job as a journalist and covering this community, I go to a lot of, open coffees and meetings with people and different events. And half the time it's not even about the event itself, it's about just people getting together and talking. And, it's just amazing what people can accomplish when you kind of find, your tribe of people who can support you and who will, encourage you to go after your ideas. And so it's just that mentality that, anything can be possible and that, we have the power and the, the smarts and the resources to make things happen right here.
Yeah. Is there anything about that you would change in any way, or anything you would add?
Absolutely great. I think when we talk about the startup mindset, it's you want to drive change, and change is happening, and entrepreneurs aren't afraid of that. The entrepreneurs are fearless. To Paul's comments, you know what the ramifications are, you know what the might be's are, but you're still willing to go do it, and that's what we're trying to cultivate. We want a whole community of people who are accepting and embracing the fact that change is happening, but if you're fearless, you can drive it. You can be on the winning end of change, and that helps the whole community thrive.
Yeah. You wrote a really terrific commentary that was just in the Press Citizen about this whole notion of being the disruptor rather than the disrupted. We want to be sort of the change that comes rather than the ones who get rolled over, right?
Thank you. Yeah, if you look at every industry right now, there's someone out there trying to change it. You look at media, at the newspaper industry. Newspapers across the country are struggling, but the Gazette has taken a different mindset. And how could we look at this differently? How could we become part of the community as a way to thrive? And you look at healthcare, you look at education, everything is ripe for disruption right now. Every career can be impacted by technology, by globalization. So the only way to insulate yourself is to embrace what could be and be on the front end of that and be that disruptor. And I think that's what we're trying to cultivate with this startup mindset. And if we can get more of our young people to think like that, that's what built our country, right? At one point we were like, well, we're not cool with Britain anymore. What could we do differently? And we've reinvented ourselves time and again, and that's what we need to do again right now because things are different.
Yeah. What would you add to that, David?
I just think that being an entrepreneur, being in a startup, risk can be scary if you feel like you're alone. So I think that not to be doing it in isolation. I think that's really why we're fostering community, to make sure people know that they're not alone. The skills that they have complement other people's skills, and working together we can do some pretty amazing things.
Well, so you work with the Iowa Startup Accelerator. Tell us what that is.
So we are in week 5 of the Accelerator. It's a 90-day intensive program. We brought 10 startups from around the world to be based in Cedar Rapids for that period of time. So we started on August 4th. We'll have a demo day where the teams will present in front of the entire community and investors on November 6th. And what we're trying to do in that period of time, I usually tell people that our success measure is we're trying to create 2 years worth of work in a period of about 90 days. So it's that intensive. There's a lot of structure and education that goes around it. A lot of support from the community. So a lot of mentors are part of that program. The last three weeks we spent introducing the 10 teams to 100 people, most of which are from the creative corridor, which was really exciting. A lot of very talented people here. So I tell people that we actually scheduled about 1,000 meetings in a period of 3 weeks, and it feels like that should be an exaggeration because it's a big number, but it actually happened.
So can you give us a picture of what these 10 teams are doing or where they're from?
Sure. So we've got 3 teams that are from Iowa. We've got one that's from Iowa City. Actually, Blake is one of the teams with her business Reapp. Very excited to have her representing the corridor. We've got a team from Des Moines. We've got a team from Cedar Falls. The rest are from, there's one from Australia and one from Israel, and then the rest are scattered around. Both coasts are represented. Texas is represented. So we were pretty excited to have such a diverse representation in the application pool.
And what kinds of businesses are they? What kinds of projects?
So we focused on what we thought Iowa was really strong in. Agriculture, transportation, healthcare, and I'm forgetting a lot, ag, right? Did I already say ed tech, education, of course. And what we ended up with is a much more broad representation. They're all tech-based companies, but some I'm excited about are manufacturing. So I mean, we're actually making things. We got a lot of pushback from that so much focus on building websites and apps. There's a lot more things that we can build with technology. So there's really a pretty wide representation in that group.
Yeah. Well, Mark, let me turn to you to talk a little bit about this Iowa City Area Development Group that you head up. Recently, there was some news about driverless cars, automated vehicles. Fill us in on what's happening there and how Iowa City and Johnson County have gotten involved.
Sure. So what we're trying to do as an economic development group is look down the road, what's coming, where are the jobs of the future, and then where can we play in that, what makes sense for us. And so transportation is being transformed quickly. And we happen to have the National Advanced Driving Simulator here at the University of Iowa. So someone had the foresight to build that. And people like Dan McGahee, who are in the audience today, have been becoming experts in different fields around human factoring and all the different aspects of this. And so we have a reason to play in this. And so then what we needed to do was figure out what these companies needed to take their innovation and commercialize it and really make it ready for public acceptance. And the feedback we got from some of the lobbyists at Google and some of these other car companies is we need a place that embraces this technology and allows us to use their roadways. Ann Arbor's building a kind of a simulated environment right now. They're investing a bunch of money into a fake downtown. And the feedback we got was that's cool and that's great, but all we'll prove with our vehicles is that they can operate in a simulated environment. That's not how we're going to get to commercial adoption. And so we worked with some of the state legislators, our county supervisors, the DOT, up to the governor's office. And what we've been able to do is get the county and all the municipalities within Johnson County to say, we welcome the testing and operation of this. So they made a proclamation that says that we welcome the operation of these vehicles. And so that allows us to go to these companies and say, come here, bring your technology, we'll surround you with Iowa-based companies, because the little known secret to many people in ag is that tractors now drive themselves in many cases. The autonomous systems that are going to be seen on the highways are already in our fields. So we've got all these layers of expertise around the state of Iowa. So there's a real reason for us to be in this space. So trucking, this is going to impact trucking. It's harder and harder for companies to find truck drivers. You read every day about fatigued truck drivers causing accidents, things like that. These systems will replace that and make us all safer on the roadway. They'll allow us to be more productive, allow people with disabilities and the elderly and young people to have more mobility than they've ever had. It'll have green impacts. We'll have, so there's all these things, but we've got to stake our claim and say this is something we want to do, and it fits perfectly with this environment we're trying to create.
So how hard was it to talk to various county supervisors, city government people? Was it hard to make this case? Or,
It was easier than we ever would have thought.
Really?
We got them all in the room and said, this is the future, this is what we can be a part of. And I think when you can get people to understand an idea and you can articulate it in a way that it makes sense and people know it's coming, and that by being first there's a benefit to us all, it's easy to get people to line up. And again, because of the expertise of the University of Iowa, and we had a reason to make that claim.
Sure. So what will the range be for these vehicles right now during the testing period?
This is all stuff we're trying to figure out right now. And so again, finding, probably start with something like a dedicated pathway where all the traffic markings and everything are clearly identifiable to these vehicles. And so we're dreaming up some cool stuff right now.
Very cool. And then there's a public education part of this so that people regular people driving their own cars or out on the highway see a car moving along with nobody sitting in there, they will understand what they're seeing?
That's the future, right? That we're still a few years away from that, but you are going to see a vehicle here on the roads very soon that has some of this capability that you'll be able to use as a demo. That we'll do some demonstrations, because a lot of this technology is already in place. You know, cars that can back themselves. You know, parallel parking. Who wants to do that? Yeah. Right. But it takes you that first time when you take your hands off the wheel and let the car do it. And so we're going to demonstrate that, and some of the adaptive cruise control. You know, there's all this technology is starting to just build on each other, and it's coming from different areas. And so what we want to do is be a hub for bringing all of that together.
Right. Well, now, you tell me the story how it all actually happened, but what I'm remembering is that you were someplace out on the West Coast at a big conference about these kinds of vehicles, whatever, and I guess you raised your hand and said, hey, Iowa City, we can do that. What kind of response did you get? Did anybody know where Iowa City was?
Yeah, that's a great question. The feedback was phenomenal. Yeah, they probably were then Google mapping where we're at. But you know, the nice thing is that people have an association with the University of Iowa, so that the university has a great reputation. And again, the National Advanced Driving Simulator, everyone in that room knew about that asset. So. But yeah, we stood up and said, listen, we've gotten approval from the governor's office and the DOT and our local jurisdictions that you can come test this vehicles.
Oh, you had that walking in the door?
Absolutely.
Oh.
Yeah, that was what we were there to share.
Yeah.
And so then, again, like what Paul was saying, when you walk into a business with this solution, people are skeptical. And then like, well, what does that mean? And so we're still trying to figure that out. But
yeah.
The invitation's out there, so.
Yeah, terrific, terrific. Well, Sarah, you write about the corridor, things that are happening in our area here, and you see a lot of startups, you see a lot of new businesses, and talk to a lot of entrepreneurs. What are some of the more interesting examples of successes that you could talk about?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I have the really, exciting job of talking to people, like this every day and trying to help share their stories. Something I think is really interesting about what both kind of Mark and David are touching on here is more and more we're going to see technology impacting our everyday lives in more tangible ways. So, in the past few years, we've seen a lot of apps and we've seen a lot of websites, and, my own industry of publishing and media has been deeply disrupted by that. But more and more we're going to see, cars and manufacturing and, physical things disrupted by technology in really profound ways. And, we talk about shaping a community with the startup mentality, and it's really going to physically change the way our communities look. But other than that, I think we just have a lot of, really great momentum in the community right now. With, there's events happening almost every day this month that you could go to. And, different companies have raised money recently and kind of had that validation from, both locally and outside of Iowa. So it's really exciting to see.
Yeah. On the one hand, I'm hearing how, for example, these driverless vehicles we were talking about, how they might make lives much, much easier for many people, maybe even safer on the highways. But is there probably also going to be a loss of some employment? So what's the trick there? As you welcome in the new thing, a community that wants to stay alive has to make sure that its working population is able to fill whatever new jobs come along?
Right. And I think that's what we've seen over the last 50, 60 years. Technology has replaced some jobs, globalization's replaced other jobs, and we can't sit idly by and just hope that that's not going to affect us. That's why it's good to be first. It's good to drive that. You look at the truck driving profession. In a few years, that may be an office job. Yeah. A truck driver may go to an office and control 5 or 6 different pods that are moving down the interstate. So that's safer for that person. It's healthier. They're not on the road. It makes that profession a more attractive profession, maybe. So there's always going to be pros and cons. But we live in an era where if something can be technologically replaced, it's going to be, right? Yeah. We've got a lot of discussions we have to have around ethics and public acceptance of things, but it's a reality we can't change, so let's drive it.
Yeah. Well, so David, let's talk a little bit more about the Iowa Startup Accelerator and who's behind that. How did this idea come about? Where are you located?
There's a lot of people that are involved, and I think that's probably what excites me the most. I mean, Eric Engelman, Ben Dillon, there's quite a few investors that came behind it. Part of that program is those teams get an investment, $20,000 for 6% equity, so that money had to come from someplace. But we started, I would say, at least 3 years ago with a small co-working space in a 5th floor building of an old downtown facility and building the community. looking for the people that were going to actually be part of the startup community we said existed. So you have to create that first. And usually when we, when my friends go out and talk to other communities about building startup communities, that's what you talk about is where are the people? Because a lot of times they look around and they see these beautiful buildings, they see these wonderful programs, and they think that you could just, airdrop those in and magic will happen. And it takes a lot of hard work, and people need to be dedicated to it. So, I mean, the list is probably close to 1,000 people that are involved in just the creative corridor alone to help it going. But certainly the driver behind the Iowa Startup Accelerator is a guy like Eric Engelman, who's the managing director, who I get to work with every day. Just an amazing human being, very giving of his time, successful CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. Kind of put that aside for a period of time, and he said, I want to do this. I want to help our community. I want to help grow companies. I want to do that here in the corridor, and getting to spend time with him is a pretty amazing opportunity.
So do the businesses or the young startup folks who work at the Startup Accelerator, do they pay some sort of fee to have the opportunity to work with you? Are they renting space? Or
the teams in the accelerator?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. We pay them. So we gave them $20,000 for 94 days of their time, and we work them to the bone. So I mean, we don't sleep much. I mean, it's mostly 14-hour days, and if you go in there on the weekend, you'll see them there on Saturday and Sunday. They're taking advantage of the opportunity that they've been given, and that's really exciting. So working alongside of them, just getting them whatever they need. We talk about just stacking the deck in favor of the entrepreneur. That's something that you'll hear, I think, throughout. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Just get the rocks off the roadway, let them go as fast as they possibly can. They've got 94 days in the program, but I tell people it doesn't stop there. We've got the seed fund that's been created. We'll go for 5 years. We'll seed 10 companies over 5 years, so that's 50 companies. So once those teams are out of that program, doesn't mean they stop getting contacted from me and Eric and everybody else that's involved.
Yeah. Yeah, now, this is terrific, and I don't know the timeline on when all of these kinds of things began, co-working spots, collab, all those kinds of things, Startup Accelerator, but has most of this happened in our corridor since, in an aggressive way? Has it happened kind of since the flood and everyone sort of suddenly realized, yikes, we have to really put this back together and come together in a strong way? Can you think back, like 2008 when we had this terrible devastation? Do you think some of this arose after that?
Timing-wise, absolutely.
Yeah.
I've never tied it actually to the flood before, but yeah, from a time, I mean, Amanda Siren West, who was having these conversations back in 2008, 9, and what's that? 11. But yeah, I don't know how, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's happened rapidly.
Yeah,
Let's say
right,
that. Over the last
right.
3 years, we've come a long way. We've got, but we're still in our infancy, right? I think our competitive advantage is that we're in the Midwest. We care about each other. I think that's where we can compete like no one else. We've got the same internet as everyone else, but this startup ecosystem is still young, and we don't have all the things in place. Getting an accelerator was huge. Funding is still a challenge, but it's getting better every day. But we're working out some kinks. But we're getting there.
Yeah.
Definitely. There's actually, a tie to the flood in the whole story. So Amanda Styron West and Andy Stoll, who started Seed Here Studios, they both came back to Cedar Rapids after, had been students here at the UI and moved away and, gone all over the world, and came back here after the flood and really saw that as a point of inspiration almost of, there's going to be this huge reinvestment in the core of our communities. And, they've seen examples like New Orleans is now one of the most entrepreneurial cities in America.
Oh, sure.
And so really, taking that as an opportunity to not just put things back the way they were, but to put it back, better than it was, and to really rebuild the city for the 21st century and for this, type of mindset where we need to be driving change.
So I don't mean for this question to be in any way offensive, but is this kind of entrepreneurial thing a young person's game? It can be anybody.
I think it's easier sometimes for young people because they don't have all the encumbrance, they don't have the mortgage and all that stuff generally.
Right.
So it maybe is easier for them to take risks, but not at all. I mean, we got people in the collab that are of all different ages, and I'm sure you got some. I hesitate to say gray hair.
It's coming in. It's coming in. I mean, I started the company that I had before I got the job with the accelerator. I mean, I was only about 3 years ago. So, I mean, I would have been 35, 36, had kids. Certainly, I mean, I think I agree. It's probably easier for younger people to do that. But I think that when you take a look around at the community and the support network that you have, that, you know, there's a lot of things that are happening to de-risk entrepreneurship. And so I think when you expose people of any age to that factor, they realize that it's not as hard as maybe they think it is.
Yeah.
I think they need to be passionate. It needs to be something that keeps them up at night, gets them out of bed in the morning. But I think that if you look around, there's definitely plenty of people ready, willing, and eager to help you out.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, you know, while it might be easier for a young person to take the risk financially of, you know, being their own boss for a while, there's so many other ways to be involved in a startup community of, you know, we need people who are mentors or people, you know, who are possibly investors in the community or people who can, you know, drive innovation inside of an established company.
Right.
You know, that's so important of it can't just be startups, but we need, you know, we need all types of sectors and industries to be innovative. So there are just so many ways to be involved, whether or not you yourself take the plunge of founding a company.
Right.
One of the entrepreneurs we've been working with over the last year or so is a fantastic example that it's not for just young people. David Gott with David's famous frozen gourmet custard. If you haven't tried it, try it. It's fantastic. But had been a banker, a finance guy his entire career. Unfortunately, lost a son and realized life is too short. He's always had this passion. And he decided, now's the time of my life, I'm going to do this. So stop being an investment banker and launch this brand of custard. And, you know, it's that type of example that I think you're going to see more and more of as this community starts to embrace taking those risks.
Yeah. Well, and David, you mentioned one thing. You're introducing kids to creative play and coding at an early age and all that. Tell us something about what you're doing with children.
Sure, it's something that I'm really excited about that's happening inside the building. So the accelerator is just one part of a larger facility and a larger ecosystem that we're trying to foster. So looking at young kids, there's programs that go around all over the world called Coder Dojo. I mean, so that, you know, we started that up in Cedar Rapids several months ago. We've got plenty of space now to entertain 100, 120 kids. So looking at ways to just engage them with technology. Also, if anybody's familiar with Kane's Arcade, happened out of Los Angeles. Kid took over his dad's auto parts store, built an entire cardboard arcade. That video went viral several years ago. They ended up, I think they raised $250,000 for him to go to college. So a 9-year-old kid just, you know, just using his creativity. Another thing that's come out of that is Imagination Foundation chapters. So we were really fortunate to be one of the 30 pilot chapters that they've selected. And that's completely focused on creative play. So just exposing kids to using their mind, find creative ways to do things. So that will launch here within the next 2 to 3 weeks. Got my first conference call on that, but pumped about that. You know, so we'll be able to, you know, and it's more about, you know, technology, creative, entrepreneurship. There's just a lot of things in the, you know, just exposing kids to opportunity.
Yeah, terrific. Any final thoughts before we break this segment? This has really been exciting. You see a good future for our area, right?
Yeah, I'm just wondering when you sleep, because the other thing that Dave and I are working on with some others is Startup Weekend. Startup Weekend events have been happening around the quarter for the past few years. The University of Iowa is our great partner with that, October 3rd through 5th. So if you've ever wanted to be a part of a startup for at least a weekend, like no risk, no lifetime commitment, but you just want to be part of that for a weekend, you can try it out. So.
You did that, didn't you, Sarah?
I did.
Yeah.
Startup Weekend was actually where I first kind of was introduced to the idea of entrepreneur communities, and you know, I've been kind of hooked on it ever since. So
yeah,
I definitely recommend it.
Great. Well, our time has run out in this segment, but it's been really interesting, and I'm so grateful to have you all here. Sarah Binder from We Create Here, and Mark Nolte, the president of the Iowa City Area Development Group, And we have David Tominski, part of the Iowa Startup Accelerator and all kinds of other good projects here in our area. So thank you so much for being here. And thanks to all of you for joining us. And if you're interested in watching any of these segments played back again, you can see them on UITV, on YouTube, or you can hear an audio version on iTunes. Information about upcoming shows, as well as links to archived programs, can be found at international.uiowa.edu. And you can learn more about Film Scene at icfilmscene.org. So I'm Joan Kerr. I invite you to join us for our next World Canvas, which is in this room on October 14th, and it's all about Brazil. So come if you can, and thank you very much for being here. Good night.
Thank you.